One of the most pervasive stereotypes about Black Americans is that of the absent Black father.
The absent Black father myth is the idea, the stereotypical and incorrect notion that African American fathers have very little contact with their children, if any contact at all.
And in Black America, the reality of being fatherless is perhaps most painful.
73% of all Black babies are born out of wedlock.
Experts say there's a crisis when it comes to Black fathers in this country.
The news media loves asking where all the Black fathers are, and that whole idea has been linked to everything from poverty and crime to even police violence against Black communities.
Why are these police shootings occurring? Well, it's because there is an absent Black father, or it's because Black families are on welfare.
But this idea that Black fathers aren't present in their kids' lives is actually false.
I started No Father, No Excuse based on my own life, how I came up, how I was raised without the presence of my father in my life.
My connection with No Father, No Excuse is me coming from Queens, New York. Luckily, I had two parents in the household. I had my mother and my father. And a lot of times, statistics would tell you that growing up in a two-parent household, you're more than likely supposed to have a good life. You know, you're supposed to beat the odds. You're supposed to X, Y, and Z. Unfortunately, you know, it didn't work out for me that way. You know, coming up in a hostile environment, quote unquote, the ghetto, I still ran the streets. You know, I still ran with the wrong crowd. Still, you know, sold drugs. I still did X, Y, and Z, even though I had two parents in the household.
It was tough, man. You know, learning things on your own, learning how to talk to women, learning how to bounce a basketball, you know, seeing the things that I saw. My homies, the streets raised me, and in my opinion, people can say differently, but I know where I was at, I know what I was doing. I know the ones that stick by me as much as they can, and I know the ones that where they're at right now, they're doing the same things that we did in high school, you know. I'm literally the only one who made it out. So for that testament, you know, I feel like it's very important for me to give back to the youth that came and that are still coming behind me.
No Father, No Excuse. My connection with that first came about through Steve, who's actually the founder of the entire organization, of the nonprofit. I'm actually kind of like thankful that he saw fit for me to be a part of this for a lot of different reasons. And he actually didn't even really know kind of like my backstory. Sometimes I look at it as, you know, just like divine intervention, I guess in reference to a lot of things that I foresee in general when it comes to just like my life and the things that I want to do. In particular, my father was a part of my life from birth to about the age of 12. And then from about the age of 12 to the age of 33, my father wasn't a part of my life. He wasn't around. You know, he wasn't there for basketball games, track games, or, you know, football games or anything, birthdays, you name it. He didn't exist.
My mother and father were married, had me and my brother. I'm the youngest of the family, and pretty much when I was 4 years old, the first thing I can remember is my father not being in the house. He obviously was presently there because I went running and looking for him, and he wasn't there. Come to find out my father, he wasn't coming back because my mother and my father had just gotten a divorce. Due to issues between my mother and my father, in a situation where they just weren't on the same page, it caused my father to be pushed further and further away. My father, he was around often, but once he got remarried, he had another family to take care of. So it went from us seeing our dad like every other weekend, sometimes every weekend, him taking us out and spending time with us to, you know, we'll maybe see him once every other month. Then it went to eventually only 3 times a year at the most. No birthday calls, no Christmas gifts, anything like that, because he had another family to take care of.
I had a rough life, I had a rough upbringing, I've done a lot of wrong, and my job and my goal is to educate the youth to let them know that even though you may have fell short, even though you may have had some setbacks, that it's not over for you.
My pops was present physically, but mentally he wasn't there. I think being primarily raised by my grandfather and my grandmother, and at times my uncle, and the neighboring fathers, it kind of gave me a sense of pride to be, a better man that he portrayed to be. I think being able to kind of see the different things that he wasn't able to do allowed me to build on a certain characteristics that I had to kind of cultivate.
My father became an alcoholic, and he got hooked on drugs. I found out later on in his life, when he kind of turned his life around, about all the different drugs that he took, and just what his life was about growing up. And just going through that period of my life, I actually became homeless because of the things that my father went through and my mother went through, and the type of things that I was growing up around in the household, and eventually became, a product of a single parent home.
There were specific moments that I recall that my dad wasn't around that kind of shaped where I am in my life, and it got to a point where everything from high school to college to right after college, where I blamed the absence of my father for not being around, eventually got to a point where I started to hate my life and everything about it. My credit was bad when I was on my own. I hated my job. I hated everything about what I had going on, and I always asked,